A very good afternoon to all the students of class 10. Today I'm going to take on the poem A Tiger in the Zoo, written by Leslie Norris. But before I move on to the schedule for today, I just had one more question to add to the previous poem that we did, Fire and Ice. Something very important got omitted that day, which I would like to share with you. The question is, how are desire and hate the sources of the destruction of the world? Base your answer on Robert Frost's poem, Fire and Ice. Now, Robert Frost has used fire and ice as two different symbols of desire and hatred. Fire burns a man physically, and desire burns him spiritually. Ice freezes on the physical level, and hatred freezes on the spiritual level. Robert is not talking about the physical extinction of this planet. He talks about the spiritual decay in the modern world, the degeneration of values, and how we are not so ethical in our day-to-day dealings. And the spiritual decay that is taking place in the modern world is definitely going to bring about the end of the world, because the modern man is spiritually dead. Why does the poet so emphatically talk like this? Because he himself has experienced the evil influence of desire and hate. As we say, degeneration of values, man is not left with any scruples. You just want to achieve your end, no matter what the path that you take is, whether it's unfair, whether it's illegal, whether it's not right. So we are not indulging in noble activities, we are actually indulging in ignoble things. So what we call about spiritually being dead means, because every day we are committing sin after sin. We commit so many sins, deadly sins of mankind, and these are basically those two powerful weapons of destruction, just as fire and ice can be. So we can take a lesson from this and try to rectify our lives by being noble, by being humble, by being a pacifist, working for humanity, a philanthropist, doing good for the others, and adopting the path of virtue and leading a noble life. This much was left, and I thought I had to share this with you. It's very, very important. Okay, now we move on to the poem scheduled for today. That is A Tiger in the Zoo, written by Leslie Norris. Now, Leslie's lifespan was from 21st May 1921 to 6th April 2006. He was a prize-winning Welsh poet and a short story writer. He taught at the academic institutions of Britain and also the United States of America. So now we come on to the poem A Tiger in the Zoo. So a first question that we need to ask ourselves, where do you think these tigers should actually be? So the answer, of course, everybody knows, they should actually be in their natural habitat, in the forest, deep in the jungles, where they can roam around freely, where they have their independence, they have their freedom, the way that God had made these animals to live. So, but unfortunately, today mankind has put these animals in captivity, in zoos, in cages, and has restricted their movement and has taken away their natural lifestyle. So that is what the poem is all about. So I will read the poem and explain it side by side. He stalks in his vivid stripes, the few steps of his cage. Now stalks, stalk is following, as we have, a stalker, one who follows, or one who comes behind somebody without making any noise, without being noticed. So that is the other stalk that we talk about. But here, the exact meaning for stalk will be he's walking slowly and quietly. And in his vivid stripes, a tiger has prominent stripes on his body. There are black stripes on a yellow fur. So deep and bright stripes. Vivid stripes would be prominent, deep and bright stripes. The few steps of his cage. Now, why are the steps few? Because the cage is very small. He has very little space to move around. That is why there are only few steps. On pads of velvet, quiet in his quiet rage. Pads of velvet. These are the pads that these animals have in their paws. So they are soft and they are very velvety. Okay, so like you have a velvet fabric. So similarly, here it means velvet that is soft and delicate pads. In his quiet rage. Now here we see that the word quiet and quiet has been repeated. So he's walking about quietly and in his quiet rage. Now rage is anger. So here quiet rage means suppressed anger. The lion is very, very angry, yes, but he cannot ventilate his anger in the form of in any attacking mode or something. Why? His anger is suppressed because he is helpless. And why is he helpless? He's helpless because it is in a cage. It is in captivity. And this is a repetition. Okay. He should be lurking in shadow, sliding through long grass. So where should he actually be? In his natural habitat. And lurking in the shadows, hiding, because they prowl. They are looking around for victims. They're looking around for prey, to hunt. So should be lurking in the shadows, hiding in the shadows, camouflaging against or not to be seen by the prey. Sliding through the long grass. Now this word sliding, it means to pass along smoothly or without being observed. Sliding through long grass. The grass is long, so the tiger moves about looking for its prey, sliding, that is walking smoothly, unobservedly, and without any hindrance. So sliding is a smooth movement. Near the water hole, and where is he? This area where all the animals come to drink water. Where plump deer pass. Now plump is a nice fat deer with a lot of flesh. So why has the tiger come there? Because that is their natural food. And in science, you've all done the food chain, how God has created this and how God provides for each and every animal on this earth. So the deer also come to drink water there. So he is lying in wait for that deer, and which will give him a very, very grand feast if he's able to attack that deer, if he's able to prey on that deer or kill that deer. Okay. Now, the very fact that the poet, he should be. Now, this he should be means it talks about the poet's feeling. The poet looking at the tiger in this cage feels very disturbed. He's not happy at all. And when he looks at the imprisoned tiger, this thought comes to his mind that he should be not here. He should be in the forest, in his natural surroundings, in his natural habitat. And looking around and looking for his food, which he will hunt naturally. In the cage, of course, they are given food, but it's provided to them. The tiger doesn't have the ability to kill its prey and then feed on it. But had the tiger been in his natural surroundings, he would have hunted the animal himself, and then he would have enjoyed this grand feast. Okay. He should be snarling. Now again, he should be. Now these are the thoughts that come across to the poet to bring about the contrast between a tiger in his natural surroundings and a tiger who's kept in captivity in the zoo. He should be snarling around houses at the jungle's edge. Snarling is growling, making those noises around houses at the jungle's edge. On the outskirts of the jungle, where there are houses, people living, that's human habitation. Bearing his white fangs. Fangs are those long pointed canine teeth which are used to tear flesh. So bearing, showing, exposing his white fangs, his long pointed canine teeth, and also his claws, which are very sharp, which when they attack, and how they attack and they clasp somebody and then tear the flesh down, terrorizing the village, terrorizing, creating terror in the village. Now, over here, the poet is putting a little hint across to the readers that why do you think the tiger has come so close to human habitation? Now, this is because humans themselves are responsible for this situation. Today, forests and jungles have been cleared, trees are felled, they're decimated ruthlessly, and as a result, we are encroaching on the habitat of these animals, the natural habitat of these animals. So when we are encroaching on it, cutting off trees, they don't find place. So as a result, to look around for food, they come near human habitation. And this is very, very contemporary also. Every day in the newspaper, we do keep reading about a leopard attacking here and a leopard attacking there, and actually coming into the heart of the city also, because they also look around for food, which they're not getting because of humans destroying forests and jungles. So food for thought here for human beings to keep away and stop this destruction. Okay, so they are forced to come towards human habitation. But he is locked in a concrete cell. Now, these past two stanzas, he should be lurking in the forest. He should be snarling around houses. So that is the real picture. Then over here, the poet says, but that's not possible. It's not possible. As you can see, he's locked in a concrete cell. He's not free. He's imprisoned. He's in captivity. Can't do anything. And that also a concrete cell made of sand, stone, and cement. His strength behind bars. Though the tiger is a very, very ferocious and a very strong, bold, courageous animal, but over here, all that is incapacitated. Why? Because he is imprisoned. He is behind bars. He cannot show his power. Stalking the length of his cage, ignoring visitors. He's moving up and down in that limited space that has been given to the tiger in anger, but suppressed anger. Okay, he cannot make a display of his anger or his strength or his might because it is imprisoned in captivity. Ignoring visitors. Now, whole day long, the visitors keep coming. People visit the zoos and the children and the adults. So everybody, when they must be looking at the tiger, must be saying something. So whatever it is, but the tiger ignores these visitors who come. Why do you think the tiger is ignoring the visitors? Because he must be seeing that so many people are coming to see him or to visit the zoo. But out of all those people, not even one human being has had a pitiful, aptitude towards him, of him being in captivity. Nobody has shown any sympathy or pity that he should be let loose, he should be out in the open in the natural surroundings. So he ignores those visitors because all of them come under one category and none of them has actually shown any concern for the tiger being in captivity. Okay. He hears the last voice at night. Now he hears the last voice. The whole day there are visitors. The whole day there is noise. There is hustle and bustle because so many people are coming and visiting the zoo. So the last voice he hears at night when the patrolling cars, the security people and the cars, the police or the security guards and all of them, when they are patrolling, they're moving about, ensuring the safety of the area. So that's the last voice at night. And stares with his brilliant eyes at the brilliant stars. Again, we see repetition over here of the word brilliant and brilliant. Stares with his brilliant eyes means bright eyes. And at the brilliant stars, again, the stars that are there, a brilliant creation of God that is there. And these stars imply heaven. Stars in the sky, in the infinite sky, symbolizes heaven. So he's looking upwards towards heaven, or indirectly looking for God and trying to plead with his eyes that have mercy on me, and why have I been kept in captivity? So maybe it's an appeal, a plea to God to set him free. Okay. So whole day the tiger is disturbed. He has no rest in the day because of the visitors. At night also he remains disturbed due to the patrolling cars who keep moving up and down. And then he keeps staring at the brilliant stars with his brilliant eyes. And with a big question mark that why has he been imprisoned? Okay. So the poet has done a good job by arousing in the reader a little bit of, sympathy, pathos for the condition of the tiger, though it's a beast. But then when God created animals and God created mankind, He's given us space, and each one has been given their own areas, their boundaries. But unfortunately, man has trespassed or encroached on the natural surroundings of these animals and has gone a step further by keeping them imprisoned for their own gain, for money's sakes, because people buy tickets to come to the zoo, so revenue is generated, but that revenue also is generated at the cost of these animals who are far away from their natural background. So, and it's not easy. You compare yourselves to be, locked down or kept in a room that is locked, and, food and just giving food and water, that's not enough. There's more to it. So, like God had created them to roam the forest, roam around happily, freely, and be and as it is, like they had used the word noble. So noble is in ranking. If you see, the tiger is above quite a few of the animals. So it's a noble, majestic, elegant creature that God has made. So, but unfortunately, all that is lost when the tiger is imprisoned or kept in captivity. Okay. Find the word, we move on to the questions, please. Find the words that describe the movements and actions of the tiger in the cage and in the wild. Okay. So stalks, moves silently, quietly, in quiet rage, suppressed anger. So in the wild, what would he do? He would be lurking in the shadow, stalking the length of his cage. And for that, we would have in the forest, he would be sliding through long grass, ignoring visitors. And the other side would be snarling around houses. Here's the last voice of patrolling cars. And there in the jungle, he would be baring his white fangs, his canine teeth, to terrorize the villagers. Then in the cage, he stares at the stars, and here he'd be terrorizing the villagers. Okay. Find the words that describe the two places and arrange them in two columns. In the wild is lurking in shadows, long grass, water hole, plump deer, jungle's edge. And in the cage, few steps of his cage, he's locked, concrete cell, there are bars, and there are visitors. Okay. Okay. Describe the cage where the tiger has been imprisoned. As I told you, he's in a cage in a zoo, and this cage is made of concrete, sand, cement, and things like that, and it has iron bars, and it is a very small cage, very little space for the tiger to move about. He can hardly take a few steps. How does the tiger look in his cage? The tiger has sharp, clear, prominent stripes, bright stripes on his body, and he looks majestic, noble. As I told you, looks majestic when he moves slowly and quietly in his cage. Very aristocratic, as we can say, because for noble we also have a meaning of being aristocratic, royal blood, that kind of a thing. So very elegantly, in a very sophisticated manner, in a very royal manner, the tiger paces up and down in his cage. And he has soft velvety pads, and he makes no noise as he moves, and he has brilliant, shining eyes. Next question. What should the tiger be doing if he were in the jungle? If the tiger was in the jungle, he would be lurking in the shadows of trees, and he would be sliding slowly through the long grass, trying to go about unnoticed, not being observed, so that there's no threat or danger to the tiger also. And he would be sitting near some water hole, waiting for some animal to come by, some plump deer to come by, so that he could have a grand feast and enjoy his kill, which he would kill naturally, enjoy his natural kill and natural skill. What should the tiger be doing if he were at the edge of the jungle? If he was at the edge of the jungle, he would be moving around the houses in the village nearby, and he would be growling, making those sounds, because the growl of a tiger can actually, be very, very frightening. So, and then he would expose or bare or show his white fangs and terrible claws, which would instill a lot of fear in the villagers. Why do you think the tiger ignores the visitors? As I told you, the visitors keep coming and going daily, and they just look at him. And they must be making faces, or they must be trying to, how children are, they must be trying to tease it, because they know he's in captivity, can't do anything. So teasing the tiger or trying to say things, making faces, but then the tiger just ignores them completely. Why? Because he thinks that all human beings are alike. They are unfeeling. They have no pity. They have no pity on the captivity of the tiger. So he stops taking any notice of them, because they're all just the same. Why do you think the tiger looks at the stars? He looks at the stars because that symbolizes heaven upwards, and with that hope that, and that shine in his eyes, that someday maybe, he's making an appeal that someday maybe he is released from this captivity. Okay. Because he's lost all hope from man. So that is why he's turning towards God. He's turning towards heaven, because he has hope only from heaven. And this hope keeps that brilliance, the shine in his eyes. Just as for human beings also, hope is a great virtue. It can keep you moving. It can keep you going. So the brilliant, or the shine in his eyes as he looks towards the bright stars, the brilliant stars, is that ray of hope that someday maybe he will be released. Why does he express his anger quietly? The tiger is full of rage, but then he suppresses his anger and he becomes silent or quiet, because his rage is of no use. His rage is impotent here, in the sense that he cannot do anything in that situation, because he's in captivity, he's behind bars, and he can't do anything. He can't show his natural strength and ability when it is in captivity. Okay. How does the poet contrast a tiger in the natural habitat and in a cage? He contrasts this beautifully, like in the cage, the poet thinks that if the tiger was free, then he would lurk around behind the trees and slide through the long grass and go and enjoy its kill by killing a deer or something at the water hole where the other animals come to drink water. So showing his natural skill and showing his natural and enjoying his natural kill. And unfortunately, here it's in a cage and in a concrete cell that he is in, and he can hardly move a few steps. There he would have a bigger area to roam around, he would be the lord of that jungle kind of a thing. But here he is, everything is snatched from him. He cannot escape from the cage, and he stops taking any note of the visitors who visit the zoo to look at him. And he only keeps staring at the brilliant stars with his brilliant eyes, with the hope that is there that someday maybe he would be released from this captivity. There would be some escape for him. And this is a very natural plea or desire of the tiger, because nobody wants their freedom, liberty, independence to be taken away from them. Nobody likes it. human beings don't like it, neither do animals. So it's a big food for thought kind of a thing that the poet has given to the readers, to the people around, that think about these animals in captivity, do something for them. That way, I mean, a zoo is a terrible and a criminal way of putting an animal. Safaris are still better because at least they're roaming around and they have freedom of, space over there, and they can move around as they will too. But a zoo is a very criminal way of actually keeping them. And maybe some will give the view that they are safer in a cage than outside, because poaching is very common. Poaching of animals, and they for the carcass, the hide of the animals, the carcass, and they sell off various things, like the claws of the tiger are very important, and they are very expensive for their fur, for their hide, for their claws, for various other things. These animals are poached and hunted. But some people think that a cage or a zoo would be a better way to keep them, but it is criminal to keep them in captivity like that and snatch away all their natural power and natural force. I hope you understood the poem, and the question answers also will complement it. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you.